Okay, this video is a follow-up or an addendum um, in the tinfoil hat series. Uh, if you go through and you take a look at, I went into Isaiah 13 and 14 and using the Nets version of the Septuagint along with the Numbers 24, found some interesting things. And the title of the video, I think, was Nephilim in the Septuagint, part 1 and 2. And when I was in there, I was working with the basic principle, which was when you look at the Septuagint translation, this Nets one, and we're in um, this vision against Babylon, and we look, when you look at Babylon in the Old Testament, the passages in Isaiah 13 and 14 and Jeremiah 50 and 51 are all parallel to Revelation 17 and 18. And so when I was doing the prior videos on the Nephilim in the Septuagint, I ran into references that sure appeared, and it's right here in Isaiah 13, mighty ones, and the reference is giants, and that, here in Isaiah 13, in the prior videos, I was saying, God is bringing these giants to fulfill his wrath in the end times, which a lot of people have speculated, as in the days of Noah, so it'll be in the coming of Son of Man, and that's in, I think, Matthew 24. And people have speculated all sorts of things about what does that mean. Well, in the days of Noah, you have the Genesis 6 giants, and you have all sorts of things that sound like that, that was the period of the Tower of Babel, the rebellion, and all that. And so in my video series, I went back and I took a look at those Genesis 6 references, tied it to all the references to giants in the Old Testament that you could track through from Nimrod primarily, and then coming forward from the original Babylon, Tower of Babel. And so when I got into Isaiah 13 and 14, I see mighty ones again, and God is the one who's calling them. And a voice of kings and nations gathered together. The other thing I speculated was that based on the Numbers 24 text in the Septuagint here, that quite possibly the seed of the serpent that's referenced in Genesis 3 was really the descendants of the giants, or potentially descendants of Nimrod. And so if we come down here, I don't want to confuse anybody, but let's just look a little bit lower here in Isaiah 13, because this is day of the Lord type descriptions. Therefore every hand will be weakened, and every human soul will be afraid, and the elders will be troubled, and pangs will seize upon them like a woman in labor. Well, if every human soul is afraid, it sort of implies that what's making them afraid isn't human. And I don't want to overplay that, but that's what it sure sounds like to me. And they will bewail to one another and be amazed, and will change their face like a flame. Behold, the incurable day of the Lord comes, a day of wrath and anger, to make the whole world desolate. And so, okay, we're definitely in the day of the Lord here in this Isaiah 13. And I know when I was going through it before, and it says, I'll destroy all the sinners from it. So it's God who's orchestrating this. And now in verse 10, for the stars of heaven and Orion and all the ornament of heaven will not give its light. And I talked about how Aryan was tied to the Nephilim, and in particular Nimrod. When he died, he was considered a god, or went back to the gods, and the constellation Orion as the mighty hunter, which was associated with Nimrod. And so this again was pointing me toward that there's some sort of return of these Nephilim coming back in the latter days, and I was seeing that in these texts here. And it goes on to say, God's going to call us down, and this is tied to the ornament of heaven will not give its light, and will be dark in the sunrise, and the moon will not give its light. And we see that in other apocalyptic passages like Joel and Revelation. And I will command evils for the whole world, and for the impious their own sins. And so this is all part of God's judgment. And here you can see the footnote to mighty ones from up above was giants. Now let's go down and take a look. Unfortunately, this is a PDF. Now I have to scroll to get to the rest of it. And I want to show you something that I'm pulling together here just to kind of tie this together better. Okay. Come down here, hang on. Okay, I'm coming down, we're in Isaiah 13, starting in verse 15 now. Whoever is caught will be defeated, and whoever are gathered together will fall by the dagger, and they will strike down their children in front of them, and they will plunder the houses and take their wives. Well, again, whoever is doing this is striking down people that have children, so it's implying that they aren't part of the people, and they'll take their wives. And I think history shows that the wickedness that was caused the flood from presumably Nephilim type giants, a lot of it had to do with sexual sins, and we see that going on right here again. And then here God's speaking again through Isaiah. See, I am stirring up the Medes against you, who do not take silver or gold into account, or do not take silver into account, nor have they need for gold. They will crush the arrows of the young men. They will have no mercy on your children, nor will their eyes be sparing upon the children. And then it goes down, and Babylon, which is called glorious by the king of the Chaldeans, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And so there's a couple of things in here to look at. Now, when I did the last videos on the Nephilim in the Septuagint, I was just postulating again that this reference to Medes was again some reference to giants, a way of saying giants. And so the point of this video, I wanted to go back and see if I couldn't find a little bit more on that. But before I leave this page here, I just want to note one other thing. I've also done a couple of videos questioning people that say the end times Babylon is New York or America or something. And again, right in these apocalyptic passages, Isaiah 13, we see Babylon, which is called glorious by the king of the Chaldeans. Again, Chaldeans is Iraq, Mesopotamian area. Okay, it will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will not be inhabited forever. So just one more reference right in here that Babylon most likely is going to be back in the Middle East, that Babylon in the end times. So the mystery that I was digging into today was this reference here, because it bothered me when I got to it. Now we know from historical accounts as well as the Bible, if you look at Daniel's statue in Daniel 2, for instance, we know that one of the conquering empires was the Medes and the Persians. But when we come to this Isaiah 13 passage, we don't see reference to the Persians. We see stirring up the Medes against you, and it's being used as sort of a definite identifier of a particular people set here. And so this isn't, Isaiah's back in the 700s BC. When we get to the Medes and the Persians, we're in the 500s BC, I believe it is. So this Medes is something different being talked about here, and it's just after this description of what appears to be Nephilim, or the giants that we saw up above, being called on by God to go conquer all the sinners of the world and to punish them, and to, we see dagger the people and strike down the children and rape the wives, right? So they're definitely an evil sort. Well, now if I go back, um, hang on here. So we're looking at an article here by Bruce Warren, adjunct professor of anthropology at Brigham Young University, and he's looking at the Nimrod of Genesis, and he goes down and he talks about that, Nimrod was in the plain of Shinar. He talks about him as being a giant. Um, you can even see this is the constellation Orion. So you can see right here that that his deification says was supposed to represent the constellation Orion was supposed to represent Nimrod, and so we've got that tying together there. And if I scroll down just a little bit more here, hang on. Still others have sought to identify Nimrod with one of the early rulers of Mesopotamia, such as the great Sargon of Akkad, and that led me on another trail. And let me just click over, see if I can't find one other reference, and then we'll kind of tie this up. Okay, so this is an article by a pastor that had drilled into some of the ancient Sumerian texts using books, that had translated the ancient Sumerian texts. And I'm just going to pull a couple of things out of here that I thought were really interesting. There's also frequent inscription of a supreme spirit of evil in the Babylonian inscriptions. The devil was more real to the ancient Babylonians than to some modern thinkers. He was, as we have seen, Sargon's rescuer and protector and probably progenitor, the donor of Sargon's dominion, and subjects the deity worship by Sargon, who was called his priest, and he is addressed as equal or superior of Anu, the father of gods and king of heaven, and in many hymns, prayers, and incantations, sheer dread of him must, one would think, have inspired such intercessions as, and here you see a worship to basically Satan. So the reason why I thought this one was interesting is, at least this pastor's interpretation of some of these Sumerian writings, was that Sargon was worshiped the supreme devil or Satan, and that Satan was potentially his father. And so, it goes back to that story of how the Nephilim were created, fallen angels mating with human women, creating these, Nephilim giants. If Sargon is Nimrod, like we saw referenced in the prior article by that Brigham Young professor, and if the Babylonian texts point to Sargon's father being the devil, probably, we would say Satan as the progenitor, and if he was the high priest, boy, you sure start to see, this rebellion. He was, no wonder he was against God and called a mighty hunter against the Lord, is because Satan was his father and he was the high priest, is what this would point to. And this is in the Sumerian writings, which are, the oldest writings. Now, if we come down here, there's a second part that I thought was really interesting in this article. It talked about the violations of divine law which produced the Nephilim described in the beginning of chapter 6 of Genesis, and great prowess or distinction as described to the progeny of human and divine union. We just talked about that. And of course, this again, the violation of ultimate law according to the traditions and records. The Sumerians look back to the time when gods lived upon the earth with men, and one of the inscriptions from the Kutha tablet, it's a Sumerian tablet, I take it, of creation comes with these words: men with bodies of birds in the desert, human beings with the faces of ravens. These the great gods created in the earth, the gods created for them a dwelling. Tamaneth gave unto them strength. Their life the mistress of gods raised. In the first days, the evil gods, the angels who were in rebellion, who were in the lower part of heaven, had been created, and they caused their evil work, devising with wicked heads, ruling to the river. There were 7 of them. The first was, and I guess the ... means they couldn't translate it. The second was a great animal. The third was a leopard. The fourth was a serpent. The fifth was a terrible something. Sixth was a stricker, to which God and King did not submit. The seventh was the messenger of evil winds. And so I thought this was important too, because one of the other big speculations about, as in the days of Noah, that the reference in Matthew 24 is talking about this genetic hybriding. And we get right here out of this Kutha tablet of creation, what did the fallen angels participate in? Hybridization of the species, which of course was a violation of the divine law. As he's saying right here, is God had each animal reproducing after their own kind, and what did the fallen angels do? They started crossbreeding program and came up with all sorts of men with the bodies of birds in the desert, human beings with the faces of ravens. Well, where did we see that? If you go to the Egyptian pictographs, you see men with the faces of ravens. And I'm sure people thought, well, the Egyptians were into the mystical, so they were just drawing these fake things. No, they probably were drawing actual perverted creations that happened by these fallen angels. So that's all interesting, and where it led me was that Nimrod of the Bible was Nephilim. His father potentially was Satan. He was the father of a race, and he was also known in Mesopotamian as Sargon. And so now we're learning about Sargon. Now I'm going to do one last linkage and try and bring this to a close. Okay, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I'm just trying to show you as concisely as I can some of the stuff I ran into today, just trying to pull this together. So, I went to Google, did a search. I came up with, an excerpt from a book. You can do that when you see stuff that ends up in the Google and books. And so the makers of civilization in race and history, and I found multiple articles that reference this, but here's just this little snippet here. So Sargon looms large in the India epics as one of the foremost ancient Aryan sages and teachers, and he bears the title the master of them that know. And why that's kind of important in all this is that reference to Medes that I showed you in Isaiah 13 in the next version of the Septuagint. The Medes back in the time of Isaiah were viewed as an Aryan race of more blonde or white-skinned people, and so the Aryans, though, was what Hitler was trying to capture. Hitler was looking for ancient technology, and Hitler was looking for cultic power. And if you go study what Hitler was really doing besides fighting World War II and trying to conquer the world, he was scouring the earth. You see that, I guess, in Indiana Jones. He was scouring the earth looking for ancient technology, looking for ancient cultic religion, and looking, a lot of people say, for this Aryan race, or creating the Aryan race again. And what was he trying to create? He was trying to create or find these half-god, half-men people. And Sargon was probably the original progenitor of the Aryan race. And he was, why did he have all this knowledge? Well, that was what the fallen angels were imparting to these Nephilim was they were basically trying to show that they could rule the earth better than God could, and they were using advanced technology as a way to gain loyalty. And we've learned that in the book of Enoch, um, that they would get their following through use of their advanced knowledge. And so here we see Sargon tied with being called one of the Aryan sages, and we get the mysticism here. That he bears the title of the master of them that know. So that brings it all together, that for me anyways, the reference to the Medes in Isaiah 13 doesn't mean the Medo-Persian empire that occurs later, that is just one of the conquering empires. It was a very specific reference to tie us back to the Aryan race and the giants going to be there in the end times, just like they were in the beginning. And we see in the beginning we had Nimrod, and we had Nimrod's rebellion and the creation of the Tower of Babel, which was, many people say the gate into heaven, the second heaven. So there's a long story, and I appreciate comments below. I'm going to put this video in the tinfoil hat section and make it the third part of Nephilim in the Septuagint. But this one was much more just trying to make sure that as I went through that Isaiah 13 passage and read across the Medes, trying to make the point that the rest of the passage was pointing to the Nephilim giants. I just wanted to drill in and make sure that reference to Medes was what I thought it was. And here I'm convinced myself anyways that that's exactly what we're talking about. And we can tie that reference to Medes to this notion of the Aryan race, and the Aryan race progenitor or father was probably Sargon, who was Nimrod. And so we pull that all together, and so I think we see this great end times passage in Isaiah 13, and it's talking about mighty ones and giants being called by God. We see it referenced as Orion and the stars from heaven. Well, Orion was the constellation of the mighty hunter, which was Nimrod, and then later we had the reference to that he was going to call the Medes in, which is Medes was the Aryan race, and it ties back to giants. And again, the Aryan race was created as part of this fallen angel program. So wow, that's a whole bunch of stuff. And we also, I guess, saw in the one article from that pastor that was looking at the Sumerian texts that it wasn't just giants being created, but it was the crossbred or hybridization, men with the faces of ravens, I think it said, and desert animals with the heads of men, and all sorts of crazy stuff. So I think we're looking in the end times here for hybridization, return of the giants, and we may not see this until after the church is gone, but these are all the crazy things we're seeing, and God calling them to go wipe out the evil of the earth. And that's where I got the notion, looking at Numbers 24, we see Og and a bunch of other references to the kings of Canaan and their seed being part of what gets judged in the end days. We see that in Numbers 24, and I speculated that the 10 ruling kings at the end of the age were going to be fallen Nephilim giants, and I think we get more support again today to that notion. So a lot of stuff there, but just wanted to bring forward something that was bugging me with that reference to Medes from the prior videos, and I think I got to the bottom of it today. So thanks for watching.